What is going on, you guys? It's your boy, the Stoic Sucker here, and we're back with episode 102 of the video game therapy series. It feels weird that this series is at a three-digit number. It just kind of points to the insanity of it. I guess it's good just on some levels that I've been able to produce over 100 of anything, for God's sakes, because it's not often that I don't know. I feel like it's not often that somebody even does 100 of anything, especially something that is not that it's only 100 hours really at this point. So it's not really that much of a commitment, but even just to have not given up at like 2 or something, it's just so easy. And I haven't given up on my Let's Play series either. Those are just, to be honest, I'm not as motivated to do stuff in the world. Like I'm not as motivated to play the game as much as I am to motivated to talk to myself, which is probably says something about me, but I don't know what exactly. Or at least my mental state. The first thing I have is just a stupid observation, but I just thought it was funny. So I cut my hand. It's not important how I cut it. Either way, I needed Band-Aids at kind of a late hour. So this is about, 2 a.m. or something like this. So I was like, well, I think all the other normal places like CVS or whatever are closed. So I'll go to a gas station. Surely gas stations have, because they have like oil and they have like car freshener and stuff like that. They got all kinds of stuff. Surely they have Band-Aids. Why wouldn't they? Well, I go to like just any regular, I go to like 3 different gas stations and none of them have Band-Aids. They don't have any kind of Band-Aid. They don't have one kind of Band-Aid, but they have 8 kinds of condoms. I mean, it just says something about I don't mean to be the one that is drawing kind of ridiculous conclusions based off of very, very inane perceptions, but it just does. Surely it says something about where we are at if we're not, because Band-Aids are, I think, you need that when it's like first aid, right? You need first aid, but we're not really in a first aid part of humanity. We're at a pleasure part because we have, banana flavored condoms, but not a fucking Band-Aid of any size, of any flavor. I would take banana flavored Band-Aids. I need anything. I don't care. But I guess that was too much to ask for the 4 different gas stations I went to, or 3 different gas stations I went to in my local area. So I don't know. I just thought it was funny. Funny observation to see that there was, I don't know, we value pleasure more than first aid, it seems, or at least pleasure is more prevalent of a sales thing than selling first aid. Not that selling first aid isn't important either, because if you've ever been in a CVS, it's like, I don't know. It's funny that they have like CVS and Rite Aid in these places. Of course they sell like prescription medication that people need. I'm not saying that no one needs any kind of medication, but a lot of the over-counter medication, I generally am of the opinion that you shouldn't take it unless you like really need it. I think it's at some point it's a certain amount of pain is good. Like it's not like, now you should never take a pain pill, but taking a pain pill every time you're in pain, you should probably just be in pain for a little bit sometimes. I think it's good for you to just experience a bit of discomfort, because and it's not, and I'm not trying to build like the guy who's all about building character and being in pain, but there is something to be said about just understanding and being one with your body and not trying to I don't know, dilute any kind of a thing that your body is saying. Anything that's bad, you just immediately sedate it. I don't think that's necessarily a good way to go about, treating your body. But they also sell like chocolate. I mean, I've never seen more chocolate than what they sell at a CVS, which is, aren't you guys supposed to be a health store? Doesn't make any sense. Why are you selling chocolate? Or ice cream? I mean, what the fuck are we doing? It's like bags of chips. You can go grocery shop. You can go grocery shopping in CVS. I mean, I guess because grocery stores now are mostly just full of junk food and candy. So you really, there's not even, there's eggs and milk there too. What are we doing? What happened to, I feel like a health store shouldn't sell stuff that actively kills you. Not that I never have any sugar or any salt. I think they're fine in moderation, but no one knows what moderation is. And I think if it's everywhere all the time, moderation is kind of hard. It's like I'm not here to run around and derade crack addicts, but if they sold crack on every shelf anywhere, all you ever saw everywhere was crack, how much do you really blame people for being crackheads? I guess on some level, you should, I guess, develop just like disgust towards it. And it's why I go into a CVS, I'm like, what the fuck are we, this is gross. Why is there, boxed pizza and lean cuisine meals in the fridge here at this supposedly like beacon of health. Like, I don't know if you ever walk into a CVS and see healthy people moving around. That's not, it's not where you find it. It just seems backwards to me. And the same way, it doesn't make any sense that a gas station would have 10 different flavors of condoms, not even just types of condoms, condom flavors like strawberry, banana, like, as if the act of sex wasn't pleasurable enough, or like people didn't take care of their genitals or whatever, they didn't clean. It's like, why do we need banana flavored condoms, but I can't even get a Band-Aid? I mean, this is nuts. What the fuck is happening? I don't know. I hate to be the guy that's drawing conclusions about how shitty our society is based off of what I see on the gas station shelves. But it's not a good sign that I only see banana flavored condoms and not a single Band-Aid. I would take any flavor of Band-Aid at this point. Whatever. I'll move on to something else. This was an interesting idea that I had just about, not necessarily about higher education as an entire paradigm, but just as something that I think would more align the incentive. Because I think part of the issue with anything really is just you look at the incentive structure. Excuse me. If you look at the incentive structures of anything, you can kind of understand why many things are the way that they are. Like, again, if you incentivize pharmaceutical companies to make money through selling drugs, they're going to want to sell more drugs. Like, it's not rocket science to see, well, why are they pushing prescriptions that people don't need? It's like, well, because they make money that way. So then it's be like, okay, well, then how do you make that not the case? Like, of course you can like tax it and stuff like that, but taxes are not very strong deterrents. Especially if it's only just like a percentage, unless a tax is like worth more trouble than it is, which at that point is not even really a tax. It's more of just like I don't know, like a huge entry fee of some kind, but like a 4% tax on, prescriptions. Like, again, it's impossible to really decide what should be taxed at once. I just don't think it's a very effective means of doing it. I think I don't know, we should find more clever ways to de-incentivize behaviors that we shouldn't want. So in the same way, like, maybe don't put frozen pizza on in everybody's face everywhere, including when they're trying to pick up just like, I don't know, a Band-Aid from CVS. Maybe don't put them on every shelf so people will stop eating them. So it's like, how do we incentivize CVS to stop selling food, or chocolate? Like, why do they sell so much chocolate? I don't get it. Why is it on every row has like it starts and ends with chocolate? It just doesn't make any sense. You could kill like an entire elementary school worth of kids with all the chocolates in there. It's nuts. I don't get it. So how do you just de-incentivize that behavior? Because I realize that you can't like outlaw it. I guess that's one way to do it. If it was just like a monarchy, you could just say any CVS, we'll behead the person at CVS if they put chocolate on the shelves. It's one way to do it, but that would obviously would never fly. You need some way to de-incentivize it. And I guess, taxes or fees are one way of doing it, but those are often bad. So I guess besides the chocolate at CVS, the other incentive I was thinking of was about like college and higher education, because colleges really have all the incentive in the world to get more people in, because it's pretty much free money. There's no like penalty. I mean, the money's kind of backed by the government because these are these huge student loans. This is just college in America, by the way. So if you're a foreign listener, not that I'm catering to this worldwide audience, but if you're a foreign listener, let's talk about America here. Same with the CVS and chocolate and stuff. I realize that I hope stores in other countries don't sell chocolate. I'm sorry, health stores. Like, you wouldn't go into, I don't know, a doctor's office and see, something that is just blatantly cancer inducing, like sugar or anything like that. Hopefully not. But again, I don't know. It's not my place to judge. But I thought it'd be interesting if instead of, because colleges have no incentive to not like admit a ton of students and keep growing enrollment. They grow enrollment, they get more tuition money. Tuition money is backed by the government. So it's kind of, and a lot of it isn't real money. It's kind of just being backed by some kind of fake, I don't know, like we'll pay you back later from the government kind of thing. And, I'm sure these students will all get great jobs. Like, there's only so many good jobs running around. Like, most of the jobs, especially now, we're trying to automate everything, like, suck. So they're not good jobs by any measure of good job. Like, they're jobs that may or may not keep you alive, but I don't think are any be ones that, like, A, could pay off student loans, but B, would give you any place to live. And like, I don't know, that whole vision of that is kind of dead. But I thought it'd be interesting if we, instead of, I guess, to de-incentivize colleges, just admitting many students as possible, creating bullshit degrees, because a lot of them make like these fake master's programs and then just admit a fuck ton of students into their master's programs and then just break in cash. And of course, even if they're like crappy schools. It's like, well, these are master's degrees. These are worth a lot of money. And so they, they charge, maybe people pay for them because they think they're good. And it's all kind of bullshit. But I thought it'd be interesting if colleges had to like fund their graduates. And what I mean by that is that like if you were college educated by a certain college, like it should be free, period. But even if it isn't, I think it'd be interesting to, because I think it's no matter what, it's good for you to have an educated populace. Like even if presumably like people that can't even have jobs, especially as like there's just not enough work to go around. So either we can make up fake jobs for people and pay them like monopoly money really to do work, or we can kind of let people explore this. I don't know, you could call like hard leisure, where it's like they're not employed per se, but they're working on things that they find interesting, or I don't know, topics of their own, whatever, on their own time. But who's paying for this? Well, the universities would then have to fund graduates that they admit and they graduate. So if you graduated from a degree program, again, ideally be free, but maybe there's some kind of payback thing. If they didn't find you a job that you wanted enough, they would pay you. I don't know, a meager allowance. It'd be like the equivalent of like a PhD. But instead of getting your PhD, you'd just be doing kind of this hard leisure that I'm advocating for, which hard leisure, I guess I should clarify that a little bit, is kind of like, it's kind of like your own independent study on things. Because I don't think it's man's natural mode to like do literally nothing. I mean, I suppose you can do drugs and then kind of do nothing. But I think most people, if you give them a week without work, they'll either do drugs or they'll start doing something. I think people don't like doing nothing. I think that's kind of an implicit understanding that I believe in, and maybe believing in isn't the wrong word. I think it's inherent to the human experience that we're not like perfect being. We don't prefer being idle all the time. Like even if given an opportunity to do nothing, we still prefer to do something. Many people have hobbies that they do for nothing, for no reason, for literally nothing. Like I do this not because I'm being paid to do it. There's no incentive to do it. There's literally no fucking reason for me to do this at all. But I've done it for on episode 102. And it's not that I'm not saying that this is like this great body of work of some kind, but I imagine if people that you educate, and again, these are supposed to be educated people. We're not talking about people that you dropped out of school. We should give them free money. I'm talking about people that are highly educated, in whatever means that we might call that. We're now kind of funding their own interests. And if, and then maybe the base kind of salary for this would be something like PhDs, would be like $30K or something. So kind of some kind of barely livable salary. But the college's job then would either be to find them employment that is more desirable than essentially doing nothing and getting $30K, or at least nothing required of them. It's still ideally be doing some kind of work because they're motivated to do something. They're not lazy people. These people are educated, and you've educated them, and hopefully they become virtuous citizens, and they're interested in working. They just have to find work that's interesting to them. But instead of it being all on them and them having no leverage, the colleges have to actually foot the bill. So you either educate the person so they're useful enough to find a job that they like and they want, that'll pay them a lot, or you pay them and forever, or maybe it's like a 10-year period or something like that, where you get essentially 10 years where you pay them back. That way it just gives, I guess, students a little bit, a lot more leverage. Because I do think there is something virtuous. Because it's difficult to say like, well, I do think college as it is now is a complete waste of time. It's only because the students themselves have no leverage. Their entire purpose is to just get a job. And there's no like amount of like, well, study what's interesting to you and try to further your knowledge, or try to, seek out difficult problems and solve them, or even just like wrestle with difficult. There's none of that. There's no like pedagogical basis to a lot of the modern university. It is all about just employment and getting jobs. And then the university is just like, well, we want more students who give us money. We promise them with more jobs. Whether or not they get them, we don't really care. We just want their money. So now everyone's like, quote unquote, educated. But I mean, a lot of them, I would argue that they're useless programs, or programs that we just made up just to get money from people. But they're also like underemployed, or they're employed in other professions. They're not doing, but they didn't really do anything. They didn't kind of use their human faculties to do anything interesting, especially interesting to them or interesting to society at all. And the fact is, most people have interests, or find interests or develop interests that are probably utterly fucking pointless in this like purely capitalistic regime where you have to have marketable skills and interests. Like something you do has to be economically useful. So like this, for example, my entire YouTube channel, is economically useless. Like it does serves no one wants it. No one pays for this. No one wants it, and no one will pay for it. No one will want it, and that's fine. I think that, but I don't think it's inherently like you could call it a waste of time, but it's a waste of time only in the eyes of like it's worth no money. But if everything worth no money is a waste of time, then there's a lot of things that surely are not like most art is again a waste of time because it's worth no money. But is it really worthless? Like, is there nothing truer to the human experience than creating some kind of work of art? I'm not talking about like work of art to people make when they're high. I'm talking about people that are truly good at it, but maybe they give it away for free. There's no one thinks it's worth anything, but we don't know. I just don't believe inherently that everything has to have some kind of economic value, because I think economic value, as I've said before, is purely perceived value. It's not actual value. Whereas vegetables are certainly more valuable than ice cream, just on any basis you want to measure that. But they cost less, right, in terms of money. But does that mean that they're worth less? No, of course not. And I think you'd be a fool to argue that. So I don't know. I just think there's a lot. I think it'd be interesting if the colleges had to foot the bill for educating people, so that what it would incentivize is the colleges accepting less or fewer students, because, well, you'd have to fund them when they graduate, or you'd find them a job that they want. And if they don't want the job, then you pay them. And that's too bad. So I don't know. I think it's kind of it just gives some leverage back to the students, because as of right now, it's like everything's on them, and there's no real. They don't win really unless they get a job that they want, which I think is happening on fewer occasions that people would like. Of course, it's still possible for people to work out fine. I think by and large, most people that go to college aren't going because they like it, or they're interested in it, or they want to further. They have some kind of interest. They're going purely because it gives them a better chance of getting a job, so they don't starve. Which is kind of a shitty, just entire paradigm to build off a society. Because do you want people who are just like, kind of like, again, kind of just living? They're not even living. They're being alive. I think living would be more of what I'm advocating for. Would be to, I don't know, experience humanness and do stuff that we couldn't just program a robot to do, or not. It's not just fake work. Like, I think doing fake administrative office work is kind of just being alive, whereas being human or living, I suppose, is a much fuller human experience and not just a bullshit life. Not to reduce anybody to a bullshit life, but there's plenty of bullshit living going around where it's not nothing real. Anyway, I just thought it was an interesting idea, where colleges would have to teach you how to think and then pay you really to think, while either they give you something that is desirable enough for you, or they pay you, because it ultimately they should bear some responsibility, because now they kind of don't. Beyond just their enrollment numbers or whatever, which will go up anyway. People will still pay to go to college. That's not going to not stop. That's not going to stop happening. People are still going to want that. Again, because they've been sold on the idea that it is a necessity and you need it. Now that everyone has it, everyone's got to get a master's, and everyone starts using master's programs, and it'll be PhD. Everyone's going to have a PhD. Maybe you call everyone a doctor, but then like there's going to be a bunch of idiots running around. You already see it. I think like I said, the stupidest people I know are PhD level machine learning engineers at like Ivy League schools. These are the biggest morons I've ever met in my life. And just on any level, like I wouldn't trust them to do anything, not even a math problem. I wouldn't trust them to do. And again, of course, that's just my opinion, but I'm sure you'd find many more that agree with that sentiment. But anyway, I'll move on to something else. Let's see. So this is kind of another somewhat delicate topic, because it's hard to, I don't know, it's hard to know what position you're in sometimes on this side of the argument, on this argument in particular. But I've run into this personally in my life when doing with strength training, because it's with or really resistance exercise. You can call it strength training, whatever you want. But there's I don't know, there's a certain disassociation between body and mind that I think you need in order to truly, I guess, do it right. And I think if you get too much in your head with strength training or just resistance training and making progress, especially if you're looking at like progressing any of the 3 big lifts of some kind, you can fall into a lot of problems, I think, if you don't properly disconnect the body and mind. I think, especially if you design and do your own training, Like if someone's not your own trainer, like if you train yourself, which I do, meaning I write my own programs and I do my own programs, you need to kind of mentally separate the like trainer from the trainee, because you can just get too far in your head. And what I've really actualized from this is that it's hard to know sometimes. And again, I wish there was a more delicate way of putting this. Whether or not I should be making progress, and I'm not because I'm a pussy, or I am genuinely like doing something wrong. So that's kind of the thesis of this is sometimes you are just being a bitch, and there's not really another way to put it. You're just being a bitch. You're for some reason you've created a psychological wall, and you just have to just bust through it. There's not any amount of like wrongful programming that's happening. But I think often what I've experienced is actually the opposite. Is that been I've always convinced myself that maybe, okay, I'm just being a bitch right now. I just need to man up and do this, or nut up or woman up or whatever want. I don't know. However, whatever gets you, whatever fires you up, I guess. Whatever little saying. But I've also sometimes a lot of times when I've done that, I've actually just had a genuine problem, like a fault in my training, where it's just been too much, and it's not something I can even expect to make progress with the amount of stress that I'm putting on myself. But I've always thought it was just like, well, I'm being a bitch. Because again, generally, I think like people like David Goggins or something whose entire ethos is, and again, what he says I think is different than how he's portrayed. Maybe I'll put someone like Tony Robbins or something like this, where, or maybe David Goggins, but Goggins is probably better because he's, I guess, more aggressive. Is the assumption that people just aren't trying hard enough, and it's like the effort. It's a lack of effort. It's not because of a lack of like, I guess a dumb way of doing things or something done incorrectly. It's just because you're not trying hard enough. And I think in a lot of cases, this probably is the case. People just don't really know what their capacities is. I think Goggins said at some point, like people stop at like 40% of their max. And I'm not saying I'm been at 100 or whatever, and I know what it's like, because I think very few people have done anything close to what he's done. And I would agree that most people, again, fall far below their like threshold of maximum thing. But I think I've convinced myself sometimes that like, well, I'm only like 50%. I could do more, literally. And then that's like, it just ends up looking back. I'm like, okay, maybe I just was completely and utterly overtrained to the point where I couldn't realistically expect to make that kind of progress at all. Like it wasn't that I wasn't, going all out. It's just that it was dumb programming. I just did it wrong. Like I just gave myself way too much to do, and or like not enough time, or just wasn't rested. I just did things just incorrectly. Again, for lack of a better word. But I don't know. Sometimes I think it's always a fair question to ask, especially not even in just the realm of resistance training. I think this obviously extends far beyond that, into more, I don't know, into, I guess, all kinds of lessons of life. Sometimes you are just being a bitch, and there isn't really like some scientific, there's a reason I have some problem. There's some, I have some thyroid issue or something. And there are cases, yes, where you have genuine problems. And I think generally it is fair to err on the side of, well, maybe I'm just being a bitch. So that's a fair question to ask yourself a lot of times, especially if you're stuck in some ways. The question you'd ask is, am I being a bitch, or is this a genuine, like, is there an actual problem stopping me from doing something? Whether that be hitting a PR, or whether that be doing something, or whatever you want, however it manifests itself in your life. I think it's always a fair question. And not always one that's easy to answer or comfortable, but is one that it's always fair. So, I don't know. I've just wanted to note that. So let's see. What else do I have here? So yeah, I guess I want to talk about just the humanities, or humans need to feel important, because I think the feeling of not even just self-importance, but importance in a larger social context is integral to the, I'll say, well-being of the human. But I think now more than ever, it's difficult, nay, impossible per se, for many to get a genuine feeling of self-importance. I think a lot of people look to social status symbols for their feeling of self-importance, like money, I guess followers or something like that. Whereas I imagine things like friends and family give much more sense of importance, but a lot of that is now more and more of it's being abstracted into things that are increasingly soulless and not things that give people genuine connection. Like, and maybe this is just because I lack, I guess, this like powerful weapon of like self-delusion that some people have, but like I just don't ever find I couldn't fall in love with like a texting robot. You know what I mean? Like they do in that movie. There's just nothing. It's just too immaterial for me to be able to do that. And sure, maybe if it was like some super intelligent thing that was indistinguishable from a human, but I think in principle, even that's kind of impossible. At least at some point, not to give that. And even that, there's a certain level of disassociation from even other humans that I think stymies that self-importance complex, so to speak. But I think increasingly now more than ever, for just the average person doing the average thing in the average situation, whatever you might call that, it's increasingly impossible to kind of reach this part where you truly do feel important, and you are important. Because in the corporate world, you're so utterly replaceable, it's not even fun. Like the whole corporations are designed to make people replaceable. Like if people were critical to the infrastructure of the business wouldn't be structured that way. They wouldn't make something that we desperately, we have to have this. Like, no, you could die, and then, a lot of times you can just not even do your work and no one's going to know anything. It's like there's no stakes involved with your work, especially if you work in a general corporate setting. Maybe if you work as kind of a more local solo contractor. So if you're like an electrician or a plumber in your local area, people will notice your absence, but there's always more than one of you in an area. So then where do people even get this sense of importance? Maybe sometimes it's just through having kids and bullying them around, I guess, is one way to do it, because you are important to the kid. If you were gone, the kid would have a completely halted, and ruined development. I mean, there's all kinds of evidence to support that, and you'd believe that yourself. As a part of it's just what do you believe, really? So suppose if you were able to believe that you are truly critical infrastructure to your business, or that you truly are the most important and necessary plumber in your area, then these don't really apply to you. But I think a lot of people see through the veneer that if the one plumber dies, there's not going to be another one. They'll find a plumber. There's not really that. Or they'll find another accountant for your little company. It's not like your absence would be missed. Surely, I'm not saying no one would miss you, but it's not like you don't get this I don't know, larger. You're not that important, which is an unfortunate reality. Myself included. I'm not saying I'm obviously not important either, but there is a certain amount of that is more and more difficult to attain now than it has ever been. So I don't know. There's a certain, maybe the answer is to try and, I guess, become able to weaponize more of your delusion, such that you can just convince yourself that you are critical to your business or whatever it is. But I kind of am very wary of attaching emotional weight to anything that far outside of your control, because you can always just get laid off, or fired or something. And then again, this giant feeling of importance that you had, this hope that you held out for, is crushed. And now it's like you have no reason to live. So I always kind of yearn for something a little bit less transient than employment as your feelings of importance. And I'd imagine family is a huge thing, because people should be important in their families. But again, many families now are just they see each other once a month, right? And or maybe twice a month. It's not, they don't really live for their families. They live for their careers, which I think is a mistake. I don't know that living for a career is ever really that good of an idea. Not because a career can't give you a sense of meaning. Again, I envy you if it does. But again, like I said, it could be taken away from you at the drop of a hat. And just because you're not under the control of that, you're not either. And I suppose the counter argument would be that you're not really control your family either. They could also be taken from you in the drop of a hat. But it is harder. Odds are your entire family's not going to be mass murdered in an instant. So the true, real stoic answer here is just to have be important to yourself, and just have your own kind of, be your own person and important to you, and get meaning from your own personal fulfillment, whether that be. And that way, if it's taken from you, you're dead. So you don't have to worry about that. Whereas if it's like your family or something that could be taken from you hypothetically, it's not as bothersome. But there is some still like, there's something a little lonely about only living for yourself, and also just kind of selfish on some levels. Not that you have to be selfish and live for yourself, but it's always better to, do things together. And humans like that, and it's hard to kind of deny that part of your biology. I guess it's possible, but it is difficult and requires a certain environment and a certain psychological disposition to be able to do that, which not everyone can really do, and I don't think I can really do either. Not that I have tried to completely segment myself from other like social validation metrics, but I have. I'm off of a lot of social things, and the social interactions I get are all in person, and again, not that I would not say no one would miss me if I die, but if I die, I imagine like the world wouldn't come to a screeching halt. It'd be like a week or a month or maybe a year, and people would just kind of get over it and then be back to normal, which is kind of the reality anyway. So I suppose maybe the true answer really is just to kind of have some feeling of self-importance for yourself. And to not to depend on other people, but to very cautiously depend on other people as your feeling of self-importance. Or just, I suppose, have a kid and boss them around. That could be your why you live, is just to raise your kid. But then your kid's going to be wrestling with the same problems, and he's going to just have more kids. So it just seems a little recursive to just lean on that as an answer. I guess that has been the answer throughout history. It's just we'll just have kids and just keep doing that. I guess for most people, that is. Some people get, their sense of feeling and belonging through money, which I think is silly. But I guess if you can do it, sure. But the issue is generally you can't do it without, murdering or pillaging other people, which is the troubling part for me. But anyway, I don't know. I just think want to note that it seems more difficult now to attain a certain feeling of importance for oneself, just because everything is so abstracted away, and there's very little humanity left in a lot of our human affairs, which is unfortunate. Not that everything's mechanized or industrialized, but a lot of it is, but increasingly digitalized, where it's not, you really don't matter, especially in a social context, like where it used to matter because you were the leathersman or whatever in your village. And while it might not be like this cosmic profession is making boots for people, there was still a lot of importance you got from that, a lot of satisfaction. People knew you were important. I guess you felt important. Maybe you weren't, but you felt important. Now it's even hard to feel important. I feel like it's like, oh, you're one out of 6 account managers in one tiny district of some giant company. How do you even feel important doing that? And you can. I'm not saying you can't. I guess more power to you if you can, but I'd have trouble feeling like an important person if I was one of 6 in this giant company where I'm one of 40,000. And so it's like I have to look elsewhere to feel important. So I have to, essentially start from nothing or find some random community people where like I feel important. Because it's not about where you are important, it's about where you feel important. Again, maybe the leather worker wasn't really important, he felt that way. But I think now it's even hard to feel that way at all, because people we're more informed. I don't know, people aren't as stupid as they once were, at least with regard to, I don't know, the propaganda lies that were fed. But anyway, I don't know. I just want to touch on that. So sorry, I guess there's no real conclusion to that, or real like, oh, you can do this. It's like, no, I just kind of think it's something I wanted to note. So whoops. Let's see here. What else is on my list? Something else. This was a stupid thing that I tried. So I don't know. I'm a naturally a low resting heart rate person. So I like coffee and caffeine to kind of raise my heart rate and get me going. Because generally I can sleep for a long time. I can relax. It's not hard for me to relax. I'm not a very anxious person. I'm not tight wound or anything. Maybe you can tell that from just my tone of voice, my monotone tone of voice, but I'm not a very high strung person. At least if I'm not mad about something, trivial, of course. But for a while I was like, well, what is there? I wonder if there's something that's not, I guess beyond just like huffing in more caffeine all the time. is there something that I can use to be a little there's something missing from my diet to will allow me to be more stimulated. So I was thinking about, well, maybe I'm like dehydrated, or not because I don't drink enough water, but because I don't contain enough, like I don't retain that much water. I expel a lot of it because of all my caffeine. So I was like, well, maybe salt then is the missing ingredient, which is kind of silly because you'd think, I guess people would advocate against like increasing your salt intake because it's like, oh, well, it restricts your blood vessels and stuff like that. But I think part of what that even does is it's related to your energy production. So like, yes, it's like more stress inducing to like ingest salt, but I think part of having energy is increasing stress. I think you that's kind of the point. I think yes, salt like constricts your blood vessels and increases your blood pressure and stuff like that. To give you energy, to allow you to have more energy. And that's just my thesis. I'm not a biologist here. I obviously don't know precisely the ins and outs of everything, but I do know that salt is very, very important for not only the hydration process of retaining water and like using it, but also just the cellular transport of, energy, ATP. I know it's involved in that. So I started just like, I guess, upping my salt intake just through eating pickles. That was my one of choice. I didn't want anything with a bunch of calories. So pickles really are just cucumbers that are just salty cucumbers pretty much. And I can't say I've noticed a difference at all, but I haven't been very scientific in my process. But that was just like a silly thing that I thought I would try to see if it would do anything. But so far I haven't noticed anything. But maybe I think I am retaining a little bit more water because I'm not going to the bathroom as frequently. But not that it's important or is of any relevance to any of my normally abstract musings, but I just thought it was interesting that I could try that. Maybe salt is actually not. I just don't think anything's a boogeyman. I think it's too easy it's now to pick something that's just bad. And I think there are things that are generally just probably bad. Like in general, like eating sugar is bad. Not because you should never have any sugar, but because you really get enough sugar anyway. It's almost impossible to avoid all sugar in food. So actively seeking it out at any level for any reason is probably not a good idea because you're probably going to get plenty of sugar just eating like bread even. So having anything that's like objectively sugary, like sweets, is probably a bad idea. So that as a boogeyman, I kind of understand. But like, I think salt is a lot more nuanced than people give it credit for. Again, generally, if you're like a fat American, yeah, you probably don't want it. You probably don't need any more salt. That's not the reason. That's not wrong. But I think a low sodium diet probably increases longevity a lot because you're a super low key, mellow person. I suppose if you're not a very, very low sodium diet, it would make sense because you never really get that higher blood pressure, that restriction, that like energy. But I also think it would affect your, I'll say productivity in some sense, where you're not as energetic. Probably don't get as much stuff done. Not that it's about getting stuff done, but you do feel better and there is more satisfaction in your day-to-day life if you are getting stuff done. Like, sure, I could lay in a bed forever, but there's a certain amount of non-idleness that humans need. And salt is kind of important for that. So I don't know. I do think that if you were like retired or something or older, low salt probably makes a lot of sense. But like if you're young in your 20s, I don't know that low sodium diet is probably that smart. I guess depending on the circumstances, but if you're a healthy person and struggling with energy, maybe salt is a missing ingredient. I don't know. I'm just kind of throwing stuff out there that I've thought about. But anyway, I'll move on to something else. Let's see here. Yeah, I suppose I'll talk about this, about living in the world here, because I've, as you can tell, I'm not very optimistic about the I'll say short to medium term future of humanity. I think there's going to be a lot of chaos, and not even just chaos in the sense where there's like, oh, you see what happened on Twitter today? No, I mean like the genuine, like, I don't know, like more like cyber attacks and war and stuff. Like, I think it's more like actual chaos that affects your day to day. And generally it's seen as a problem for people that live in their own world, so to speak, people that are just kind of out of it. But I kind of think now, and I agree with the sentiment. And I think it was Tim Dillon that said this, but he's like, the world is designed to just like to drive you insane. I think the modern world now is like culture is schizophrenic. Really, there's not any kind of rhyme or reason to why stuff happens. It's a complete mess of culture and like subculture, and like everything is a complete mess. And so it's kind of designed to drive you insane. So checking out and living in your own world is probably the healthier option, right? Whereas I think in the past, it was the nobility and the aristocrats and the smart people that were able to go into politics and like understand. But now I think it's just kind of like the world is such a fucking mess. And again, I say the culture is schizophrenic, I think is really the best word to put it. That it's probably healthy to just completely check out. And just be totally out of it and live in your own world. I would say that generally I live in my own world. In some sense, I get very limited, if not in any news at all, because most of the time you don't even need it. It didn't affect me at all. And in fact, maybe I should get some more just so I can have a little more energy in the day. If I was more amped up about climate change or something, I might have more energy to, I don't know, do my spreadsheets or something stupid, whatever else people have to do all day. I guess it would, kind of gives them energy, but I would prefer to not work myself over these fake problems with this schizophrenic culture that is just kind of designed to make people go insane, which I really think is a level-headed take, I guess, ironically. Because I don't think it is, I don't know, it's nuts. I don't know how you keep up or are supposed to be an informed. I think it's almost the less knowledge you have, the better in some sense. I almost talked about the wisdom of ignorance last time, which I do think is the case. I think there is a certain amount of ignorance. And now that culture is so fragmented and, again, kind of lost, I think ignorance, more ignorance is better, no less, and you'll be better off. It's wiser to know very little because, again, most of it, in fact, pretty much all of it has almost nothing to do with you. There's very little, if anything, that affects you on any day-to-day level, any week-to-week, month-to-month level. I don't know. I just can't even think of anything that would really impact you. Like, what do you do every day, and what would really be like? I think you'd be more willing to like hear about a road closure, right, in your local town. But do you even hear about that? No, you hear about, I don't know, some meat factory blowing up or some, somebody in Israel did something. It's like, why are you? You've never even been over there. Why do you care? Like, I realize that you might think it's intelligent to stay up to date on current events, but these don't matter. This is nothing. Right. And there's like, how much more are you not hearing about? Like, all the stuff that you do hear about, can you fathom the fact that there's probably many, many more things that you're totally unaware of? Or imagine all the atrocities that happen in every clan tribe in Africa. Like, these have no bearing. You're not going to go over there. You don't have any, like, is that really your problem? It's like a clan in Africa. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? Of all people, what are you going to do? Hold up a sign somewhere? It's like, no one cares. So I guess, not that I think it's always right to always mind your own business, but again, most of the cases with the culture now and the information is spread around, I honestly think you should mind your own business. I mean, not that I don't give a fuck what's going on, but I don't give a fuck what's going on. I don't have anything. I have no dog in all the fights that are going on in Africa. I can't do anything about that. I want to go over there and fight them. What about the problems in my backyard? I don't think there's a certain, I don't have this like, I guess, early American idea where I have to go solve and right all the wrongs in the world. If I have to go fight all the, communist countries everywhere else just because, I believe in democracy or some kind. Which, again, I think even I'm starting to kind of doubt democracy as a whole. I think there were some good thinkers like Aristotle or someone, maybe it was Plato, no, I think it was Aristotle, that just didn't believe in democracies. Maybe it was Socrates, I'm not sure. But there is, I guess, some credence to that. I think there would be a case that it'd be a less chaotic world, and one that's different and surely flawed, but better perhaps to live under some kind of monarch. Because at least a monarch would be beholden to, at least you'd imagine this. Of course, I'm not saying that I'm advocating for a monarch, but I'm just kind of entertaining the thought here. Would be beholden to keeping their family or their, I guess, bloodline or whatever recommendation legacy alive by not fucking everything up. So people that did fuck up would just get launched out. But presumably, I think even now the country's so large, you can't even, how are you supposed to govern the whole thing? I think there's some argument that said to go back to the states that just to do everything, because it's just, I don't think that there's not any. I think any amount of effort in trying to fix problems, you're just as likely to cause just as many more, with the size of everything now and with the amount of variables at play. So I think reducing the number of variables, one way to do that is just to shrink the geography and the number of bodies you're working with. So instead of working with 350 million people, work with individual states. Because I'm sure in many states, like what, is immigration really a problem in Indiana? Probably not. I imagine there's not a whole lot of immigrants to Indiana. So why do they need to, they shouldn't spend any time worrying about immigrants, because they're not anywhere. They have no immigrants coming into Indiana anywhere. I mean, or Montana or something. Pick anywhere that's remote. So they shouldn't worry about that. But somewhere like Texas, it's on the border, or Nevada or something. Maybe they need to spend more time thinking about it. Again, I don't know, because I don't know the situation down there. I'm not even from there. How the fuck would I know? So I think, I don't know, having like one central authority trying to govern all these, it just seems like a lot. And even if they are people that are genuinely trying to do a good job and have good ideas for stuff, how do you implement it in, how do you reconcile the differences between Indiana and New York? Like, there's not even fucking this, it's almost a completely different country. So why would you even govern them the same? It doesn't make any sense. I think there'd be obviously a lot of problems with like reverting back to states as, the way to do things. But I do think it would, again, reduce the number of variables we have to work with. I think the problem with the federal government doing everything is it's almost impossible. Why would Indiana be wasting their time with immigration stuff? No one's going there. No one's going there. It's not an issue there. Maybe it is. I don't know. I don't live there, so I wouldn't fucking know. So how are they supposed to know? I guess some bureaucrat in DC, how are they supposed to know what's going on in Nevada? They don't even, unless they're from there or go visit there all the time. Even then, they still get a very flawed, they see the museums and shit like that. They don't actually live they don't understand it, right? And I think you actually get politicians that might actually be homegrown, and help reduce some of the corruption. Not that I'm trying to fix everything, because again, who am I? But I don't know. These are just musings I had today. So, not that I'm normally one for politics. I think it's all kind of a waste of time. I think if you care about it, you're an idiot. But I don't know, there's certain things that just didn't quite make any sense to me. But I really don't care. So anyway, let's see here. Here's the last thing I'll talk about. Just because we do live in a capitalist regime, I think it's fair. While I'd love to say that I'll never sell out, or I don't have any principles. I think it's kind of hard, because it's hard to say that without like ever being able to backtrack yourself. It's like hard to say that without being a hypocrite until it doesn't matter to be a hypocrite. Because here, like for example, I could say, well, I'd never sell out. I'm a man of my principles. I'll never do anything. And then, I don't know, the Saudi government or something offers me, I don't know, $80 billion or something like that to like join Facebook. Again, this is just hypothetical. Not that I care about $80 billion, but there's probably a lot I could do just out of spite and for fun with $80 billion, and it's just joining Facebook. It wouldn't be that much. I'd probably do it, and this I would totally be selling out my morals if I joined Facebook for $80 billion from the Saudi government. But I'd be a hypocrite because I've said this whole time I'm a man of my word. So I think what I want to do in these last few minutes of this episode is to set my price of what I would sell out for and what selling out actually means. So obviously the example of me selling out to the Saudis to join Facebook, $80 billion is totally worth it to join Facebook. But there's obviously more that I would do for less. So what would I do and for what amount of money? And money is stupid, but it plays this social role that I hate it, the fact that it does. But ultimately, if I was an absolutist in the sense I never cared about any dollar I ever spent, I'd give away all my money immediately and then I would starve and die. So there is like almost a certain like poverty level I have to actually care about money, which is the reason I hate it so much, because I wish that I didn't have to care about it at all, because I do think it's stupid. I think it poisons the soul. And I think the pursuit of it is a problem. I think it only should come as like a helpful externality to doing what making good use of your human faculties and not something that should be sought out in a means of itself. I think that part is morally abhorrent. All that to say, I think that my price for, I suppose, joining Facebook, joining Facebook is probably the wrong, I guess, example here to run with. But I imagine I would only do things that I think would violate my moral principles on the order of, I don't know, I'll say 40 million 2024 US dollars would be what I would like work a job for example. So like, I guess this is probably a fair example. Like how much would I have to be paid in order for me to work at Google? And let's say I have to work at Google for a year, or per year, actually. I'd say per year, Google would have to pay me, I think $4 million. And I'd probably only work 1 year, and then I would quit and retire. So that's 2024 money. So do the math on whatever year I end up selling out. And it better damn well be for 1 Google year's worth of work for the equivalent of 4 million US dollars in 2024. So that's my price of selling out. Because I do think that not only is that a ridiculous amount of money to ask for, given who I am and what I'm not capable of, but I do think it at least is reason. I'm not lying in the sense that there wouldn't be any amount of stupid material money that would get me to do something that I would never want to agree to do. So it's ridiculous enough to be like, Google would never give you $4 million a year to do nothing. And by the way, the job I'm saying would be very easy. I would refuse to work more than like 35 hours a week. Which again sound like a millennial who's asking for a pay raise and not do anything. But this is just me selling my soul here. This is not cheap. I don't think human souls are cheap. I'm sure in the eyes of Google or the military, I am cheap, but ultimately that's my price for selling out, which until it is that high, I won't. So I guess you have my word up until that point, which I think is a fairer way to frame this whole discussion around money being for morons and kind of, I guess, fight the power, fuck the system, whatever, would be to at least set a ridiculous price that if somebody chooses to meet that price and up the ante, then fine. Then yes, I will sell out. And I'll spout out good platitudes about Google for 1 year only for $4 million. And of course, obviously it could go up too. I think as I get more grounded in my morals, that 4 could turn to a 6, turn to an 8 real quickly. But as it stands right now, that is what I have to say. But I may contradict myself tomorrow. So that's the beauty of it, is I'm a different person tomorrow. Anyway, wake up. Anyway, peace out. Thanks for watching.